What's up, everyone? This is Jono from Carta, and I'm going to do a quick commentary on Relanar. This is the opening track on our new record, Shards of Black. So I'm going to walk through and talk about how the song was written, the story behind it, some of the production, and things like that. So let's dig right in. Alrighty, here we go. By the way, this is one of the first songs I wrote for this record, and everything starts with a riff, right? And it was the initial guitar riff for this, which I actually wrote before the very first Baron Carta record, Step Into the Plague. I'd had this riff knocking around in my head for a while, and I could never quite find a way to fit it together. And this is one of those songs where it really was kind of went on this journey where you had no idea how it was going to end up. And I was really proud with the overall results. But as soon as I wrote some of the initial parts of this song, what became clear to me was that there was something kind of evil about it. There was something malevolent about the story as I was kind of putting it together. And that's when I came up with the idea of people kind of coming to worship this god called Relanar. You know, they're kind of locked into this kind of worship and religion, almost like a cult. And then eventually they realize that Relanar's not real, and they kind of break away from it. And that was kind of the spirit behind it. But every single bit of this started out with that guitar riff that you can hear. I've talked about this in the past, but to me, bass is a super important instrument in Baron Carta. Like it's not relegated to just propping up the guitar. So these little bass licks at the beginning were designed to kind of add a little bit of flavor to the song, and it became evident as soon as I'd written the first version of this song that this was going to open up the new record because it feels so atmospheric. You know something's kind of coming at this particular point in the song.
Walk into the sea, the ancients they pulled me, defined by nothing more.
Now, it's obviously building with that kind of guitar kind of playing around in the background, that bass playing around in the background. And one of the things that I spent some time talking with Mynett, who produced this record, was when these guitars come in, it's got to be an absolute kick to the balls. Like, it really does. It could not be, you know, man, they kind of come in. I wanted it to kind of like when it comes in. And not only did Mark do an incredible job pulling together the guitar sound, like it you know, just the way he reamped my guitars to give them the grind that I've been looking for years was part of it. But also he added this like deep bass hit when the guitars come in, and it just really smacks you, especially when you listen to this song in the car.
The fallen devil fear. Yes, the arrow sun goes down, the cold begins to soar, his evil wrath.
Again, we're all in like build-up mode, which is at this point in the song. Like, we're a minute in and it's kind of building up. And I really wanted to kind of, when I was writing it, I was like, it needs to get to just some kind of riff that just grabs you immediately, but there's kind of a lot going on. And what was interesting is that I was coming up with all kinds of riffs and I couldn't figure out what I was going to write. And I went downstairs and I was kind of frustrated because I wasn't able to write. I knew what I wanted to write, but I couldn't come up with a riff. I went downstairs and I cracked open a nice cold beer and I put on Thunderstruck by AC/DC, and you can hear a little bit of this in the riff that's about to come. Cue Angus Young. Bunch of people have asked me, like, what is Relanar? You know, someone actually emailed me the other day and said, I've been looking online for Relanar and I can't find anything about this god. Well, the reason for that is I made the word up. I was actually walking one time where I was taking a hike with my family, and I was saying to them, like, I've written this song and it's about an evil god and I need to come up with a name, and it's got 3 syllables, da da da. You know, and we were coming up with all kinds of ideas, and anyway, we came up with Relanar. Now, at this point in the song, I really wanted to get into like a groove. I really love bands where the music's relatively simple, but what happens is it's just kind of pulling you along. There's kind of like I don't know how to explain it. There's kind of a flow to it, like almost like a seismic wave that's happening through it. So when I wrote this next section, it's just got the guitars like chugging along. But what keeps it kind of bouncing is the bass in the background. It's a little hard to hear, but the bass kind of goes dun to dun to dun, dun to dun to dun, dun to dun to dun, dun to dun to dun. See if you can hear it.
The fire's raging inside the ocean's reflection. Blackened figures will anoint its attention as the saints inspire for Relanar.
See what I'm saying? Dun to dun to dun. That kind of keeps it kind of going. Also, our latest record is called Shards of Black, and every record that we've put out so far, and I plan on doing this again in the future, you'll hear the title of the record as a lyric in one of the songs, and you'll be able to see it just here.
Temples build his image, coming a steep bow. Shards of Black descend to feed all his people as the faded cries ignored by Relanar.
Now, I wanted to kind of get to almost as if you're building towards a chorus. And when I was writing this part of the song, I was building towards a chorus. And so this next section was designed as kind of like a pre-chorus. But then once I'd written the pre-chorus, I realized I actually don't think there needs to be a chorus. So you'll see what I'm saying.
Praise to thee, this saints unscreen. What's their fight? My hateful mind, clothed in time.
So originally when I wrote this, it went back to the Relanar, Relanar, and I was like, it's a bit predictable. And my view when you're writing music is if you're able to guess what comes next, write something else, because that makes it too predictable. I want it to always be exciting and always be interesting. So it struck me that what we needed at this point in the song was a guitar solo. Now, talking about guitars, one of the things that was interesting about writing this song was, like most bands, when I'm recording the guitars, I've got a guitar on the left, guitar on the right, and that's kind of how it goes, right? And one of the mistakes I'd made so far in all of the Baron Carta recordings is I used the same guitar for the one on the left, one on the right. And Mynett, when he was mixing, he was like, Jono, next time, make sure you use different guitars, because then you get a slightly different sound. So what he did when he reamped the guitars is he used two completely separate guitar amps to make everything sound cohesive. But what I'd started doing, because this was, I think, the first song I started recording the guitars and the bass for, was recording a third guitar that would be panned to the middle, that would just kind of like thicken things out. And I think this proved to be a bit of a challenge for Mark, because there's a lot of low content frequency in our songs. Like, when I record the guitars, it's not like a normal guitar. It's a 7-string guitar, which is already lower in how it's tuned, but it's tuned down all the way to drop A. So there's a lot of low content frequency. So you had two drop tune guitars on either side, one drop tune guitar in the middle, and then a big thumping bass guitar in the middle, and then everything else, guitars and bass drums and whatever else. And the way Mark balanced out those guitars just sounds phenomenal. So what I love is you can hear the guitar solo really clearly in this next section, but just listen to the rhythm behind it. It sounds super cool. This was the last guitar solo I wrote for the record, and this next section that you're about to hear, I really wanted it to kind of sound almost like Queen, but with guitars, like lots of harmonized guitars coming together. I ended up recording like 5 or 6 different parts, and then it sounded too much, so I just dialed it down to 3. Now, this next section was really important to me, as I wanted it to, again, build towards something. And I pretty much write when I write songs, I write them pretty much chronologically. Like I start at the beginning and keep writing. I don't write the end bit and then glue it to this bit and all the rest of it. So I knew I, again, wanted to build towards something, and I knew I wanted to build towards like a bridge, like a change where it goes in this completely different direction. But I didn't know what the bridge was going to be, right? And I'll talk about that in just a moment. But to me, at this point in the song, this is where I wanted Ralf to really take over and it to sound really big. And check it out. So at this point in the writing process, I was like, okay, now it needs to go in a completely different direction and then ultimately kind of come back to the Relanar bit. I had no idea what to do. And I sat on this for probably about 2 or 3 weeks trying to figure out what to do next. Came up with all kinds of ideas. Somewhere it went super heavy and grindy. Somewhere it went really thrashy and fast, and I could not figure it out. And then I realized the solution to this is to just start with this, just like a riff that sounds pretty non-metal, that's just really light and delicate, and then almost like you've got this kind of like thread that goes through the song, and then underneath that thread I put some really fat guitars and some really big vocals. Okay, and this is kind of what I came up with. So that little guitar there, it's not very heavy, but it's just designed to kind of really kind of cleanse the palette, right? As we're going forward. But I didn't want to just play that for too long. So that's when I was thinking, well, this is where the bass could come in. And I was thinking, wouldn't it sound cool if we have some almost like slap bass, but not slap bass, but something that's really funky. And, you know, I'm a huge fan of funk. Like I love bands like Dumpster Funk and Earth, Wind and Fire. Something really funky that would kind of come in and where you'd think, what the hell is going on with the bass? And this is what it sounds like. So these first few vocals, like that line there and then the next line, are very delicate vocals. And then the idea was to then bring in the guitars. So Ralf is still singing the same kind of melody, but then it just kind of fills up. So what we're doing is we're kind of occupying, if this is kind of the song and this is all the low end frequency and this is the high end, we're occupying this area up here. And it's sounding pretty good. But then when you bring in these guitars, the idea is it's kind of like lowering yourself into a warm bath, and it just, everything feels right, you know. And I gotta say, you know, everyone can like their own music, everyone can not like their own music, and you don't have to like our music, but I'm really proud of this.
The monsters that hunted now become my prey. Years of blind devotion falling down. This beast of burden ordained and nameless bounds.
And this is where the vocals kind of change a little bit, and I just love the way he sang this. It sounds phenomenal.
They tell you how to live your life. Fanatic loyalty to their rights. The founding fathers decreed in the First World War.
I love creating mythology, and when I was writing a bunch of the lyrics on this, I thought, wouldn't it be cool if the idea of this kind of the founding fathers of this Relanar kind of cult were formed in World War One, and that was the idea a bit around it. And my theory is that it's kind of like I'm a huge fan of stand-up comedy, and what makes a lot of stand-up comedians really funny is when they use really oddly specific references in a joke, right? And I think it's the same thing with music. When you make really specific references, it kind of brings the song to life. So saying the founding fathers decreed in the First World War, you don't know anything more about the mythology other than it happened in the First World War, but it kind of gets you thinking, and I think it's really fun.
These blackened mirrors of force and fear. The threat of heaven or the devil's spear. A fiction flies, a soul undone by fire.
So back to the similar kind of guitar riff is going to kind of come in, but just this big kind of stretched out kind of hold before it comes in. Now, one thing I want to comment on as well is the video. When I sent the brief over to the producer, who is the same team that did the Altrincham lyric video, one of the things I said to him was like, this is the song, here's the lyrics, and this is the topic, and that was it. You know, with Altrincham, I was a little too prescriptive. I was saying like, I wanted to do this, this, and this, and this, and he kind of get back to me and he said like, listen, Jono, you kind of got to let us do our own thing. And I think that was perfectly reasonable. I was like, I'm sorry, man, that's totally fair. And he went and did his own thing, and it was great. So I thought, I'm gonna do that for Relanar and make sure that I'm just gonna send him like, this is what the song's about. Here are the lyrics, and I just got this video back, and with a few minuscule changes, primarily around wording in the lyrics, I was just so happy with it. It's got this real picture book fairy tale feel to it, and very different than anything we've put out there before, and I just love it. When I originally wrote the intro, like when I was kind of putting this part of the song together, I literally copy and pasted the intro part into this part, but it needed something a little different, and I'd been listening to a lot of Iron Maiden around that time. So what I decided to do was to I just realized I didn't switch screens. What I decided to do was to kind of change the bass and just do something that Steve Harris does a lot in Iron Maiden, which is where you've got you know, the guitar stays the same, but the bass changes. I just think it sounds really interesting. So there you have it. That is Relanar. I hope this was interesting. A little bit of a behind the scenes of how the song was put together. Thanks to all of you out there for supporting the band and just telling your friends and telling the world about it. Like we really appreciate everything that you're doing. I'll see you soon.